Hey, would you like to learn how to holistically feed your skin the right nutrients so that it is glowing from the inside out? A lot of us focus on anti-aging procedures, but these cost thousands of dollars and quite frankly are not as effective if you had some of the basics down first. On this conversation, I bring on Dr. Mark Tager, who's been in the aesthetic industry for decades, and we discuss some real good skin tips from his new book called Feed Your Skin Right. Stay tuned for an exciting interview. If you want to learn how to grow thicker, fuller, and longer hair fast, then make sure to check out fullyvital.com. The team has come up with some 100% natural ingredients as well as some great products that stimulate hair follicles from the inside out. Actually, they stimulate hair follicles in 4 ways. So get started over at fullyvital.com and start growing thicker, fuller, and longer hair today. Lastly, if you're enjoying this channel, then make sure to click the subscribe button down below so you get notified when we release new episodes. Our goal on this channel is to help you look and feel younger and live your most adventurous life. So make sure to hit the subscribe button so you can get notified when we release new episodes. Hello and welcome back to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast. My guest today is Mark Tager, MD, who's the CEO of San Diego-based Changewell Inc., an organization that trains and coaches healthcare practitioners to enhance their presence in person, on camera, and online. As a physician, he's well-grounded in aesthetic, lifestyle, regenerative, and integrative medicine. He has served as the Director of Health Promotion for Kaiser Permanente in Oregon and as Marketing Director for several medical device companies. Dr. Tager has written 11 books. He's a master of communication. We're going to be discussing his new book called Feed Your Skin Right. With that said, Dr. Tager, welcome to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast.
For us. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here.
You have a very, very interesting history and one that I want to dive into. And I have so many questions for you for skin, but also we were just discussing lasers and aesthetics as well. So let's just, for the benefit of the listeners, let's get your background. Tell us your background and how you got interested in medical devices and how you ended up writing a book on skin.
Well, about half of my career has been in this integrative functional world where I was really one of the pioneers early on in the late 70s. For this thing called wellness. And we didn't have the sophisticated tests we have today, but we had lifestyle management, lifestyle medicine, and we always had nutrition. And then 20 years ago, I got excited about aesthetics, started to work with some colleagues. We created the company that created the Fraxel laser, and that revolutionized how we approach the skin. And in the last 7 or 8 years, what's really fascinated me is how disciplines are coming together. So we have building skin health and beauty from the outside in, and we have it from the inside out. Mm-hmm. And this is an exciting paradigm shift. So no longer do we just go to a dermatologist and we say, well, what about diet and acne? And when I was trained, the dermatologist said, oh, that doesn't have anything to do, what you eat doesn't have anything to do with your acne. Well, right. We know that's not the case. And so if you want radiant, glowing skin, you got to work from the inside out and the outside in.
Yeah, I love it. And speaking of, there's a lot of friends, I think mainly women, that spend a lot of money at dermatologist offices. And it's, like it used to be, you have to spend multiple $1,000s to keep up with the appearance. And now there's a realization that, of course, we can start to do things on the inside. We can start to reverse aging on the inside. Collagen makes up our organs. It makes up our skin. And so both of those are linked. So yeah, I'm really excited that this is a new world that we're in. And anti-aging inside and outside and longevity is gaining so much traction. Okay, so your new book is called Feed Your Skin Right. And there's a lot of detail in it regarding the skin, which we're going to dive into. So before we do that, Dr. Tager, would you please explain to the audience the different layers of the skin?
Sure. The skin is divided really, for our purposes, into 3 layers. The epidermis is the outer layer with no blood flow. And what's amazing is if you you could do it, you could pull a hair from your head and you look at it in the cross section. That is the width of the epidermis. It is non-vascular. Everything starts at something called the basal layer, where the cells grow and then they flatten out, they lose their nuclei, and then they shed. That process takes any place from about 35 days, plus or minus. Then beneath that is the dermis. The dermis is where all the action is, where the collagen and elastin is, where the blood vessels, where we have the nerves, we have the sweat glands, we have the hair follicles. And so we think when we are putting topicals on our skin, we're trying to push bioactive molecules in through a barrier that doesn't really like to let things get in. But really, the nutrients that we take in go through our bloodstream and they find their way into the dermis, and then they diffuse on up. But no, beneath that, we have the hypodermis, a lot of fat, muscle.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Yeah, those are the three layers. And the most important one that I picked up from what you just said is the dermis, because that's where all the action is. The epidermis is mostly dead. And so the stuff that we're going to be talking about in this interview, talking about all the foods that we can eat, supplements even, that improve the nutrients in our body, have to be at some point delivered to the skin. And so I would assume there's a lot of cutaneous or blood flow, I guess, to all parts of our skin, right?
So about 5% or a bit more of the blood flow goes to the skin. Now, obviously, if you're sweating, if it's hot, there will be more blood flow to the skin. But if you think about it, we talk so much about collagen and elastin. Those words are kind of burned into everybody's mind. Oh, collagen and elastin. And, you lose about 1 to 1.5% of collagen and elastin with each, after age 40, you lose about 1% a year. So that's disheartening in some ways. But what we're trying to do is bring nutrients into the dermis where the fibroblasts are. And the fibroblasts are creating the collagen and the elastin. So in order to do that, we need to give them the amino acids that they need. We need to provide them with vitamin C, which is an essential element that we cannot make in the body. It must be supplied in the diet. We have to provide some iron and then a little bit of silicon as well. But all of that has to be there in order for the body to create collagen.
This is a very interesting point you make, and people do understand now that there's certain insults that all of our cells are going through. These are oxidative insults, oxidative stress. This could be inflammation going on in the body. This could be too much glycation. So cells have to deal with certain types of insults in the body. But what you're saying, Dr. Tager, is that to improve collagen and elastin in our skin cells and even our organs, we have to feed them ingredients that are the building blocks of collagen, meaning amino acids and vitamin C and iron and silicon, I believe you mentioned as well, correct?
Right, exactly. And we just don't tend to think of that. Now, the reason is, first of all, most of the benefit you will find in the diet. Now, I have a saying that I use when someone comes to me: I cannot out supplement your crappy diet. It's just not going to happen. And the reason is Mother Nature is so much smarter than we are. If you think about it, I go out to my garden. I've got plants of every shade and color, and there are thousands of phytonutrients there. Those phytonutrients are there in combinations. They're also there to protect the plant from the harmful UV rays. So we need to get most of what of the nutrients from food. We need to get our fiber from food. As you know, fiber is just so important because the fiber feeds the good bacteria. The good bacteria make short chain fatty acids. Some of it's butyrate, which helps heal the lining of the gut. But two other short chain fatty acids, acetate and propionate, go into the bloodstream, make it to the dermis, and then start helping to protect the barrier function of the skin. So just like we can have a leaky gut, we can have leaky skin. So we need those short chain fatty acids. We need the omega-3s as well, and some of the ceramides, which are also very protective of that skin barrier. And all of that comes from inside out.
Got it. Yeah. I want to ask you about that. So the one thing that you said that people should pick up on is the combinations of phytonutrients in these plants are what are magical, and therefore we should be eating as much natural foods and plants as we can. The second thing is, in terms of your principles for eating right, there's right? People talk about anti-inflammatory diets, or people talk about feeding your gut microbiota. How would you kind of describe the overarching principles that you have for feeding your body for healthy skin?
What you put in your mouth should look as close as possible to the way it was created.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to eat grains, vegetables. I eat some meat, not a lot, fatty fish, eggs. All of that doesn't come wrapped in, it's not processed food. The issues, I have such an issue with processed foods and sugary sweets. And if we just take that out of the equation, if all people do are to take out the processed foods and take out the sugary sweets, sugary drinks, and the added sugars in processed food, they would immediately start seeing benefits. We know that when we look, for example, at acne, we know that there are three things that contribute to acne: sugar, dairy, and fats, unhealthy fats. Now, if you're a teenager throwing some hormones and throwing a little zinc deficiency and stir that around, and those pimples go popping. So there's so much that we can do to work on the diet. Now, the challenge, the difficulty for many people is we are talking about health behavior change. And it is easier to do a fad diet for a little while. It is easier to take a supplement. It is easier to put a topical on your face or go for a procedure. This is really a major lifestyle approach.
Yeah. What's interesting when you talk about lifestyle approaches, I have recently started wearing continuous glucose monitors on my arm. And the feedback that it gives you after you eat a meal causes an instant reaction in your body that you don't forget. For example, one time, once in a while, I go to Starbucks and reward myself with I don't know if it's a caramel macchiato or one of those sugary drinks. I'm like, it's fine. I got muscle, I'm lean. But I did one of those when I was wearing a continuous glucose monitor, and my blood sugar spiked 50 or 60 points. And that was the warning sign for me a couple of years ago. I've never touched that drink ever again in my life, right? So it's that behavioral change when it comes to feedback loops. Now, I understand with inflammation or even with glycation, these are a bit longer because you have to go to your blood, you have to go get a blood test with your doctor, and then you can see maybe your inflammation, your CRP levels, or HbA1c, long-term glucose. So what's the best way for people to start to make changes in their life? Because they can't actually see what's going on in the body. Sooner or later, after your 30s, you start to see skin and wrinkles and maybe gray hair. But what have you seen in terms of principles that people can adopt to enact these lifestyle changes without real-time feedback?
Well, there is real-time feedback. And that real-time feedback is energy, mood, fatigue. For people who have food sensitivities, they will see skin changes or skin changes improve. So you've got the mood, fatigue, energy levels. You also have weight, managing one's weight. I mean, there's feedback you get every single day if you step on a scale, or every 2 or 3 days. There's also skin tone, skin coloration, hydration. All of those now they're subtle. I mean, they're not as quantifiable as going and getting an hemoglobin A1C, right, which is a measure of glycation, but it just, in this case, it's the red blood cells as opposed to the collagen being glycated. So all of those are the subtle signs. And I think part of this has to do with getting in tune with one's body. I mean, when you do yoga, for example, you are one with your breath. And it is basically you are slowing down and getting and receiving feedback from your body. And I think if you start moving in the direction to eat really well, for many people, they lose weight. I mean, if you just don't have that, whatever that you had, that caramel macchiato with its 500 calories, which is 1/4 of what you should be taking in a day, and it's probably got 10, 12 teaspoons of sugar, which is it's half of your requirement for added sugars. So I think that this is slowing down, getting in touch with oneself.
Mm-hmm. Great. Let's talk about glycation for a little bit. A lot of folks have not heard actually about what glycation is. They know what anti-inflammatory stuff is. They know diabetes and high blood sugar, but I think it's worthwhile for us to just tease into this a little bit. And from what I understand is when you eat too many sugars and they're in your bloodstream, not only do they cause insulin problems and insulin resistance, which leads to a lot of downstream major diseases, but also short term or just medium term and long term as well, it can attack your collagen, it can attack DNA, and it can even attack fat cells. And so this extra sugar is attacking your collagen and breaking it down from the inside in your body, in your organs, and you're unaware of some of this. And so that is what a lot of people refer to as glycation. So is that fair? And then what do people do about it in terms of?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I never use the word attack, because that's just not
damage.
not in the scientific vernacular of a physician to say attack. But what happens is the sugar molecules bind onto proteins, and when they bind onto hemoglobin, for example, they glycate the hemoglobin. They change its molecular configuration. Well, the same thing happens in the skin. Collagen is this 3-part molecule it's interwoven. And when you mix it up with too much sugar, it makes the collagen brittle, it shortens it, it fractures it. And we see a lot in people with lines on their lips, cross-hatching. It makes for very brittle collagen. And it can do that in other organs as well. Here we're talking about type 1 collagen. So there's that. Now, this is amazing. We're number one in the United States. We are number one, hands down. Now, the average American takes in 100 grams of added sugar every day. Wow. Now, I take in about 35 to 40. So that means that there's somebody who's doing a lot more than the 100. Mm-hmm. And you think about it, it's hidden everywhere, these added sugars. If people just started reading the labels for everything and just see that in that 12 ounces of a sugary soft drink, they are getting 10 teaspoons of sugar, and which is 34, 35 grams of sugar. I mean, once you kind of get that, you say, well, wait a minute, I could start cutting that down. So this is a process of being attentive to sugar. You're right, diabetes, inflammation. The other thing is that these advanced glycation end products, okay, which is what happens when the glucose sugar binds to the protein, they themselves are inflammatory. So you've got an inflammatory component going on in addition to a changing of the molecular structure of the collagen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And in terms of, I want to talk about testing in a second, but in terms of foods to eat, I think you've said that eat foods that mimic nature as they appear in nature, basically, exactly. As much as possible. And with foods to avoid sugars as much as you can. What other foods should people generally stay away from?
What's really important is the ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. Mm-hmm. These are essential fatty acids, and they're essential because they must be supplied in the diet. Now, before World War II, the ratio was about 3 of omega-6, 3 or 4 to 1 of omega-3. Now, we need omega-6s. They're not all bad. We need some of them. But when that ratio today gets to be 18, 20 to 1, which so many people have, and that's from the corn oils and all the refined oils, sunflower, safflower, etc. Then what we do is we start tipping the balance, and some of those omega-6s start creating inflammatory molecules. They're actually called prostaglandins, but a big word. But the point is, when you're out of balance, you are tilting the fatty acids towards the creation of inflammatory molecules. And so you really want to lean on your flaxseed, your olive oil, even canola is pretty decent. You can lean on that a little bit. but that's where you want to move towards more of the avocado oil, olive oil, monounsaturated. So you start tilting that that balance. Nuts, seeds, unroasted are really good. So, and then just cutting. Now, if you cut out your processed food, guess what? You cut out a lot of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's another one. And, we see, it's interesting. The omega-3s are by nature so anti-inflammatory. And if you think about people with skin irritations and skin lesions. Now, the other thing is that we have to help people understand what are food reactions, what are food sensitivities, and what are food intolerances. Now, there are some foods that some people will eat. These will be nuts or shellfish. They blow up right away. They know it. This is an IgE reaction. It's immediate. It could be anaphylaxis. It could be life-threatening. But there's so many folks who have IgG-mediated longer-term food sensitivities. They eat something, and later that evening, they itch. Their neck itches. They bring out a little rash. They feel really crappy. And those are IgG-mediated. And then the third category are the food intolerances. Those can be related very often to enzyme deficiencies and the lack of the ability to break down these macro components so you can absorb them. And I think that as we age, if you look at people 6% are not producing enough hydrochloric acid. They have enzyme deficiencies. They're not breaking down their proteins, carbohydrates, the fats. And so they get all sorts of digestive problems. So I think that's another overlay on top of all of this.
Yeah, it's a great one. Okay, let's jump into testing. And from a testing standpoint, what I'd like to know is, obviously you talked about food sensitivities or intolerances. What can people do there? What can they do? There's this concept of blood type that's been around for the last few decades. Is that real? Should people be testing for blood type? What about ethnic backgrounds? And also this new science of nutrigenomics. Where is this all going from a food testing?
One of my favorites. Okay. So if you think about it, there's no other person on this planet with skin that is the same as yours. And you are this unique entity for lots of reasons. Your lifestyle, the amount of time, good sleep you get every night, your choices in food, your genetics, your microbiome, the health of your gut, your food sensitivities. Now, all of these we can pretty much test for. The lifestyle stuff is really a matter of questioning. So very often for people who see patients, the first discussion is always food, exercise, stress, and nutrition. I mean, you always have that discussion. But then when you start testing, first of all, there are some basic blood tests that you can run that are the shape of the red blood cells, the size and shape of red blood cells can clue you into a folate deficiency. There general inflammatory markers like HSCRP, the hemoglobin A1C, ferritin, which is critical. You can get some of the magnesium or zinc levels, red blood cell levels. And then, of course, vitamin D. 92% of folks don't even meet the estimated average requirement for vitamin D. I would also say that 92% don't meet it for choline either. Choline is essential for nervous function. We've been throwing away the egg yellows for all these years. And why? That's where all the good stuff is. That's where the B vitamins are. That's where the choline is. So you can get some basic tests there. Now, once you've got that in place, another interesting test is nutrigenomics. And, you have inherited 3-4 million SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, little genetic variations, little substitutions. Now, most of the time, and that's how they track you via 23andMe, for example. Most of the time, nothing happens. They don't code for important proteins, but sometimes they do. And there we start to see divergence in people. Why one person has a genetic variant that means that they need more vitamin D, they need more vitamin C, they need more zinc, because they are either breaking it down too fast or not handling it metabolically correctly. And then there are the genetic variants that have to do with skin. The extent to which you pigment is a genetic variation. The extent to which you glycate, we talked about that, is a genetic variation. The extent to which you break down collagen through an enzyme, MMPs they're called, they break down collagen. Now, all of this can inform you as to why you might need more of a supplement than someone else. Then we get to the microbiome, and there's many tests, but the inexpensive consumer ones are what's known as 16S. They're big shotgun kinds of approaches. They're great to look at a big population, but they are not functional. They don't tell you how those bugs in your gut are, what they're doing, how they're functioning. So there's whole genome sequencing for the microbiome. And what you're looking for is diversity, and you're looking for dysbiosis, which is when the bad bugs outnumber the good ones. You don't want to get rid of all the bad guys. You just want them in balance. And so we can learn a lot from that as well. Food sensitivity testing we spoke to. There are other GI tests, organic acids. There are tests that look at zonulin, which is a protein that opens up the little spaces between the enterocytes, the gut lining cells, and lets things get into your system. So there's a fair number of those tests that can look at that. Then there's also hormone testing. Mm-hmm. You can get both from serum, you can get your sex hormones and things like thyroid, very critical. People, for example, with vitiligo, there's a strong association between that and autoimmune thyroid disease. If you fix some of the thyroid, you can perhaps influence some of these other skin conditions. That can be done either serum, and there's also dried urine for that as well. Mm-hmm. So there's a host of tests. The really good clinician will use tests in moderation, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at lifestyle, nutrition, intelligent supplementation, and in combination with pharmaceuticals. There are times when we need pharmaceuticals.
Right. Absolutely. I love this approach, because anybody can go start testing and spend thousands of dollars and spend all this money and then maybe not even have the perfect approach, right? So at some point, you've got to say, let's get the basics in order, and then we can test for some things that we might think maybe off kilter, possibly. Two of the things that come to mind, at least. One, I get more complaints from women when I talk to them, is thyroid. And the second one also, interestingly enough, is a lot of my friends, especially in Los Angeles, are going vegan. And I talk to women that don't eat red meat, for example. And so that leads them to deficiencies in folate, B12, as well as iron, possibly. Do you see, or have you talked to people that see deficiencies in iron for people that are going vegetarian or vegan?
Yes, iron is a problem. I mean, mm-hmm. Iron is a problem for many women. Certainly women who menstruate very often can have very low iron levels. It is a challenge to get enough iron from food sometimes. I mean, how much spinach can you eat and how much do you actually absorb? Right. So there are iron supplements. The challenge, of course, is that they do constipate, most of them. Right. There are some that are less, that create less constipation than others. But, if you look at a vegan, the other issue you have is for collagen. They don't get hydroxyproline in their diet. And that's one of the 3 amino acids that's essential for collagen. So if they have enough C and iron, they can make hydroxyproline from proline, which is in their diet. But it is a bit of a challenge to do that, to be a vegan.
Okay. Let's now move into the supplemental portion of this interview. I want to talk to you about a few of those. We've been touching on collagen back and forth, so I'll just start with that. And there's a lot of supplements on the market. Collagen's becoming a buzzword and a big industry in and of itself, the supplements. There's different types of collagen, regular collagen supplements, hydrolyzed collagen. There's also gelatin you can use. The only downside that I've seen of gelatin is that it kind of becomes like, it freezes over and becomes like gum when it's put in cold smoothies, for example. So it's not very good for smoothies. But if you heat it in tea, you drink it as a tea, you can actually drink or ingest gelatin that way. So your perspective on these
Sure.
three, and if they actually even work properly or no.
Yeah, let me give you my perspective on collagen.
Okay.
The aesthetic industry has done such a good job of teaching consumers collagen, elastin. We've done a good job. If you think you're going to drink a collagen drink and that collagen is going to go right here to lift, your sagging cheekbones, you've got another thing coming. So again, collagen is a protein that's made up of amino acids. Now, when you ingest collagen, it is broken down into the amino acids, and that is what is absorbed, the amino acids. Now, when you have bioactive collagen peptides, they've hydrolyzed it. They've broken it down for easier absorption and quicker absorption. Probably a good thing. If you are essentially a meat eater, you are getting all of those amino acids. And if you are breaking down that meat, fish, if you're breaking it well, you're going to get all those amino acids into your body. Now, the question is, where are they going to go? How do they know where to go? What's going to tell them to go one place over another? And this is where the combination of biostimulatory procedures in which you kind of wound the skin a little bit, either with a laser or a microneedling, or somehow or other get heat into the dermis through a laser or ultrasound or another device. What that does is that says, hey, we've got a wound here, mobilize the resources. Now, the traditional laser rejuvenation involve, or RF is an exact radio frequency, you're bringing heat into the dermis. You protect the outer layers, bring heat into the dermis, and you heat it long enough for the collagen to unwind and shorten. That collagen is now denatured or deactivated, and it is now the scaffold on which new collagen is created. Mm. So you've created, and there's something called heat shock proteins, and it says, hey guys, we need help, mobilize your resources. So that's how that process occurs. It occurs through a process of signaling how that takes place. Another great example is fat transfer. If I don't have a lot, you don't look like you have a lot, but if I could take a little fat from around my tummy and spin it and purify it, stick it in my cheeks, that fat dies. Mm-hmm. But what it does is it says, hey, the dead fat is then the signal for the scaffolding for the body to create its own new fat. So whenever we talk about beauty, we talk about regeneration, rejuvenation. That's what it is. It is the body doing these things. And you are supplying the nutrients that the body needs in its wisdom to make what it needs for health and healing and aesthetics.
Yeah, what a wonderful way to put that. It's the body's so wise and so intelligent that it knows exactly how to heal. And all we can do, or us humble humans, is provide it all it needs, the basic nutrients that it needs to rejuvenate. And so you touched on a lot of technologies that I'm very interested in personally, because now I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I got to do some lasers, I got to do some microneedling, I got to do some radio frequency. So I want to ask you if that's okay, just different devices, because you've done the Fraxel, you've been part of the team, you've been part of the Candela team. And so what I understand is there's multiple different ways of rejuvenation. There's the surface level, which is my skin, the exterior. There's wrinkles on it. There's maybe like fine marks on it, and I want to get those gone, and I want the skin layer to be resurfaced, I believe the CO2, the Fraxel device or the ablative device are very, very good for resurfacing just the surface layer of the skin. Is that true?
Well, it depends. It depends on the depth of penetration that you want to achieve. And for the most part, lasers today are tunable.
Yeah.
We can do very shallow work and just get rid of a little pigment and rejuvenate the skin, or we can go deeper and get into the dermis and heat that dermis up and get a biostimulatory effect. So, if you look at, and I don't think you need too much, by the way, you look great.
Thank you.
But I do think it is, as people get older, it's a good thing to do a procedure that will take some of the pigment off your face. And sometimes that can help with, any skin growths as well. But that's a good thing to do. You just finished being out in the sun in the summer. You are being really good about your SPF, but you're still cooking. Okay.
Right.
You're swimming in the ocean. You can't put on enough SPF to really protect you all the time. So I think it's a good idea for people to get a procedure periodically to take down some of the pigment. But all of that is surface. Now, in the book, in Feed Your Skin Right, I'm really only talking about biostimulatory things. So I don't talk about neuromodulators. So in other words, what that does is you're injecting something into a muscle. The muscle is weakened for a period of time, so you can't raise up, you can't go inward. And I'm also not talking about most of the peels, which are really nice, but they don't get into the dermis. But I like to think that if you're going to invest money into a biostimulatory procedure, you want, or just for example, hyaluronic acids. Put them in, they trap water, they hold it in. When they're there, they're there. When they're gone, they're gone. Now they stretch the fibroblasts a little bit, but there are other injectables that are biostimulatory. They give you volume, but they also stimulate the body to create its own collagen. So that's the way I've kind of, because you could write a book. I mean, many books about beauty.
Right.
And I had to make the choice of just staying beauty from within, because that is, in fact, the category. So that's sort of what I talk about in Feed Your Skin Right. And I look at those injectables that are biostimulatory, the procedures that are biostimulatory. Now, microneedling creates these channels. And you mentioned that earlier, I know. And I think that's a good thing. And it allows you to get substances into the skin. It's short-lived. But it does disrupt the skin barrier and allows you to get things in. Most of the topicals that people have just pretty much sit on the surface. Now, there are some things that get into the skin. Vitamin C is the classic example of a molecule that gets into the skin. Why? We measure the size of molecules as Daltons. Vitamin C is a 600 Dalton molecule. And anything less than 1,000, maybe 1,500, doesn't really get into the skin unless it's been specially configured to deliver it, or we breach the skin barrier. And that's when we do that with some exfoliation and things like that. So vitamin C is the classic one. However, having said that, there are so many bioactive molecules. There are peptides, there are growth factors, there are exosomes, there's the B vitamins, and it goes on and on, NAD, CBD products. All of these are essentially bioactive molecules. And they each penetrates the skin at a different rate, in a different way. There's on the face, we have hair follicles, and molecules can go down the hair shaft, get into the skin that way. By the way, we don't have them so as many on the neck. So there's really, particularly in women. In women, there's very few hair follicles in the neck, so you have to be careful. So the point then, how do you choose what's right for you? I mean, there are 85,000 topical products out there on shelves today, and new ones cropping up. That was as of 2014, there were 85,000, so probably a lot more. How do you make that decision? I think it's a bit of a trial and error process, to be honest. A good skincare regimen has a few things in it. Certainly going to cleanse your face. I mean, that's pretty basic. But you're going to use a good sunblock, one that is a mineral-based, and one you're going to use that doesn't leave you looking like chalky.
Right.
You're going to go for the most part, a retinol. And the reason is that helps to turn over the skin much more quickly. So not everyone tolerates a retinol. Some people with very thin, fine skin, it just dries them out too much. And so you want to use it very sparingly. We've got this concept now called skin cycling, which is a fancy word for saying, hey, things that irritate the skin, let's do them a little less frequently. So, there's nothing wrong with just doing a retinol for a couple of days and leaving some time off, or doing it every third day, but giving the skin an opportunity to rest. Then you're going to select the bioactive molecule that you like. And it's going to be a trial and error process. And you can go to, well, I'll say mainly women buy this because they put on about 2.5 times more products on their skin than men do.
Right.
So you go to their cabinet, their medicine cabinet, bathroom vanity, and there's all this product there. And it's true, and rightfully so, because you want to try what works when in your for your age, your menstrual cycle, perhaps. There's all sorts of refinements there, and I think that trial and error process is a good thing. In general, I lean heavily towards the science-based products because they've got some good research there. When it comes to nutraceuticals, which is wide open, I also lean towards the professional supplement companies. I did single out some of the consumer ones that are really good in my book because they follow the procedures of CGMP to make a product that is potent and safe and tolerable, and you know what you're getting. There's no toxins, and they're not full of fillers and binders. So I think that there's variability on the cosmeceutical side, but it's a wild west on the nutraceutical side. So yeah. I think I really have some very, and I in the book, well, I did an interesting thing. I went ahead and asked my colleagues, my dermatology buddies, my really good, smart nutrition buddies, what do you recommend and why? And what should people spend their money on? And it's really interesting. You just get a couple of products from each of the experts. You don't get a lot. And it does point to the fact that less is often more. You don't need as much. You don't need a special topical for every part of your body.
Right. It's what the companies want you to believe. Okay, so this is really good what you're telling us. You've told us a really great beauty routine you can apply. You've told us that lasers can be modulated for surface level and depth level. I'm actually looking at maybe doing for a skin tightening effect, maybe an L therapy or a thermage or like a RF skin microneedling. Interestingly enough, I was in Europe this summer and I tried to go get an RF microneedling session, and the practitioner just straight up told me, it doesn't work, don't do it. And I was looking at him like, I came here to pay you money and you don't want my money. Okay, cool. I guess I won't do it. But it's really interesting. So you have to pick somebody who knows what they're doing and then research the laser as well for the exact type of modality you're looking for. Is it more tightening and lifting, or is it more surface level stuff? Or like you said, brown spots or red spots? They're also different. And then you also touched on barrier activation and how we can get some of these good molecules into the skin, past the skin barrier. And vitamin C was an example of that. But you're saying most of these do sit on the skin. So either you can use microneedling to get those in, or very, very specific, maybe good lines that have some science behind getting into the skin. But otherwise, most of these skin products are going to sit on the skin.
I think the vast majority of them, I want to go back to my first idea. Mm-hmm. And that is that the best way to get nutrients into the skin is through the diet, through what you eat. That's the way you bring those nutrients into the skin. Now, it depends on what you want to do. Tightening procedures, you mentioned that. First of all, they depend upon collagen remodeling, upon thickening of the collagen, and that ability, once you're over about 60, that really falls off. Mm-hmm. And it is also not as predictable, the tightening effects. Tightening, you can take two people that are pretty much the same age, and you can do a tightening procedure in one and they get phenomenal results and the other one doesn't. Yeah. But I also have a word to my colleagues who are doing aesthetic procedures. And it is that issue. Why do you do the same procedure on two people? One of them heals up very nicely, has an incredible effect. The other has long-standing irritation and swelling. And this gets back to what we were taught in medical school. I don't know that this is terribly appropriate to say, but we used to say PPP. This person has piss poor protoplasm. And, all of our results in aesthetics are dependent upon tissue health and how good that underlying tissue is, the skin, to respond, to heal. And all of these factors that we've talked about, the dietary factors, the lifestyle factors, whether someone gets enough sleep, the amount of glycation, their nutrigenomics, all of this contributes to creating either, if you do it right, you get a healthier tissue. Then when you have your procedure, you get a healthy response. The other thing is this principle of collagen remodeling. Remember, I said the collagen unwinds and shortens and becomes a scaffold. Well, collagen remodels after one of these heat-based procedures for months. So you constantly will see improvement, particularly in the collagen or elastin, over months, not days and weeks, but months. So that's another thing to hold on to as well. Mm-hmm.
So this is really good. What I'm summarizing from our conversation here is, one, get your basics in order, get your stress, your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise in order. Then look at some of these testing to make sure, you're aligned with your either genomics or what have you. Once you've got that in place, then also look at some very selective supplementation. Then look at a nice routine for your face, and then do some of these procedures as they're needed, right? Because if you don't have a lot of these in place, then you're just going to spend thousands of dollars and not get the results that you could. One prime example being PRP. Like PRP is pulled out from your own blood. So if your blood is not healthy, and you can see two different types of blood when especially the doctors that draw blood, you can tell the difference in two people. And it's your platelets that are going to have the result. And so if those platelets are not healthy, they're not as many or as plentiful, then you're not going to have as good of a result for sure. So I love this bottoms-up approach. The book is fantastic. I encourage everybody to get it. Because
can I show people a picture?
Yes, please.
There you go. Feed your skin right. And I'll tell you a funny story. When I created the cover, I was giving a talk to a group of aesthetic professionals, all women. Mm-hmm. And I put up 5 covers. And I said, which cover do you like the best? The cover I liked was the least popular. And that was the one that won. So it just goes to show you, it comes back to this concept of getting some feedback. When you see a professional, that's what you're doing. You're getting feedback. when you eat right, you're listening to your body, you're getting feedback. When you do some of these tests, you're getting feedback. And you're creating that sort of loop of doing, getting feedback, and modifying. And that's what the life process is. And this process to personalize nutrition and beauty.
Yeah. And you can do this over time. It's not that this year, 2022, you've got to have all these tests done and spend 30 grand on your health. No, just take your time. Life is going to be long. And as long as you're taking corrective measures and improving on a month by month basis, year by year basis, you're going to do pretty well in the long term. Dr. Tager, where can people go about getting your book?
Okay, so the book is available on Amazon and also Kindle. And folks who want to connect up with me, I'm at DRM Tager on Instagram. Professionals, hit me up on LinkedIn. And then keep your eyes open for a course I've got coming out soon called Inside Skin Beauty, which is a 9-hour course to learn more about what I've been speaking about.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Dr. Tager, for coming to the Anti-Aging Hacks Show.
My pleasure. Thank you.